Hello to all. It is May 26, 2010. I hope all my Canadian viewers had a great long weekend. Thanks for viewing my previous videos and visiting my website, www.ourhost.ca/davidsblog.htm. Tonight's video segment that I am doing is a real dandy one. Tonight's topic is public sector workers and their pensions in Canada. Public sector workers and their pensions in Canada. There should not be a widespread disbursement of a special pension or an additional pension to most public sector workers as now exists through payments to federal, provincial, and municipal public sector workers. According to the Ottawa Citizen, a strong majority of workers in the private sector do not get a special pension from their employers, while a strong majority of public sector workers do presently receive a special pension. So this situation represents a great double standard amongst these two types of workers in Canada. Therefore, this situation creates an inequality between private sector and public sector workers. Why should a business owner, an employee of a business who doesn't receive a special pension, a plumber, a carpenter, an electrician, etc., pay for public sector additional pensions through higher taxes? Some businesses do very well, some only do moderately well, some do poorly, and some don't last long. So why should all these business owners have to pay for widespread public sector additional pensions through higher taxes? If the public sector special pension was largely reduced in number by the three levels of government, that is federal, provincial, and municipal, then these governments would save a combined several $billions a year. I would give the special pension to the following public sector workers who save lives, such as doctors, nurses, ambulance attendants, paramedics, food safety inspectors, Health Canada scientists, and those who have dangerous jobs who we need in the system in order to lure them into the system, such as firemen, hydro line workers, but not those hydro workers who just do desk jobs, Canadian Armed Forces soldiers who patrol or fight on foreign soil, but not those who are safe on domestic soil, and the police officers who patrol the streets, thus putting their lives at risk, but not an officer who does a desk job. A fireman actually not only has a dangerous job, but by possibly burning to death in a fire and breathing in toxic chemicals, but he or she also has the potential to save people's lives, so he or she should definitely receive an additional public sector pension. If a Canadian soldier works both on Canadian soil and on foreign soil, his or her pension should be based only on the time he or she puts their life on the line, which would most likely be the time he or she spent on foreign soil. Those who would receive the special public sector pension may be referred to as a necessary evil in our society. A necessary evil in our society. There should be no special public pension to prime ministers, premiers, mayors, councillors, cabinet ministers, MPs, MPPs, MLAs, some government scientists, crown attorneys, teachers, professors, judges, Supreme Court justices, the Governor General, Lieutenant Governors, etc. If the politicians, some government scientists, and others within the public sector don't like working without a special pension, then let them go and see if they can find a private sector job with a special pension. The New England Journal of Medicine and other medical publications keeps the medical community aware of medical breakthroughs. So even if medical researchers leave Canada as a result of not receiving the special pension, the medical information will still get to us. If former government scientists and politicians, as well as others within the public sector, can't find jobs within the private sector, which gives an additional pension, then they will probably return to the public sector with no additional pension. And anyways, there are probably a number of these workers within their profession who would be willing to work without an extra pension. Public sector workers who would not receive a special public sector pension under my plan would receive a good paying salary for the type of job that they do. The Canadian Senate should be abolished, and newly appointed senators should be given no special pension while the Senate is still operating. It would take a lot of courage for governments to follow through my plan. The federal and provincial governments would need a strong majority government and to plan and to implement the plan at the start of their mandate. It would be like opening up a can of worms by the politicians. But it needs to be done in order to save the governments many billions of dollars a year. There would probably be a lot of opposition of my general plan from public sector workers and their unions who probably got these people the special pension in the first place. However, private sector workers would probably be generally in favor of getting rid of most public sector special pensions, since most private sector workers don't receive a special pension in the first place, as stated before in my essay. This would probably create a conflict between the private sector workers and the public sector workers due to this likely polarity of views. I believe that unions cause special public sector pensions to appear in the first place. If I am wrong, I apologize in advance, but I don't think I am wrong here. A former teacher of mine once stated that the unions of the 1975-76 era had gone too far with their demands, but the unions of the early 20th century did a number of good things, such as reducing long hours of work, making working conditions safer, and getting rid of child labor. He said these things because he is a fair man. Now, getting back to the government's proposing to largely do away with special public sector pensions, opposition parties would probably rally around public sector workers who would be probably angry about possibly losing their extra pension. In this case, the public sector workers would lack a sense of fair play, and the opposition parties would also lack a sense of fair play. But the politicians would also be opportunists here in search of public sector votes. If I was a public sector worker and I worked at a non-dangerous job, and I didn't save people's lives, I would take the extra pension if the government was stupid enough to give it to me in the first place. But I wouldn't go on strike in order to retain the extra pension if the government was threatening to take the extra pension away from me because I didn't deserve this pension in the first place. If the extra pension was taken away from most public sector workers by the various governments, then the public sector workers would have to have the money that they paid into the pension plan themselves returned to them, adjusting for the rates of inflation for the various different years that they paid into the pension plan. Governments of the day must have been weak to give in to union demands to give public sector workers a special pension in the first place. Government should cater to legitimate public sector needs, but not necessarily their wants. Some people may not be able to distinguish between legitimate needs from wants. Governments should run a tighter ship when it comes to giving extra public sector pensions, not their present loose ship. If private sector companies are willing to give their workers an extra pension, that is their own business and no one else's business. This practice doesn't have to be imitated in the public sector because most private sector workers don't receive a special pension in the first place. And under my plan, a significant minority of public sector workers will still receive a special pension. In general, a public sector worker is no longer contributing to their job once they retire. So why should they receive a special public sector pension once they retire? This above statement wouldn't apply to those public sector workers who save people's lives or who have dangerous jobs, who we need in the system, as stated before. We need more doctors in the system, as we presently have a doctor shortage in Ontario. So we need to offer them a special pension as an incentive to get them into the system in the first place. The public sector worker should receive a good salary for the work that they do, such that if they save some of their money over a long period of time and retire at a reasonable age, that along with Canada Pension Plan, an old age pension, and maybe a registered retirement savings plan as well, then they will definitely have enough money to live on. Some public sector workers will have more money to retire on than others, though, since some public sector workers will have higher paying jobs than others, as well as other determining factors. A teacher should not be able to retire at age 50 to 55 and have a special government pension provided, as well as having some of their own savings to live off of, with the government pension being the larger share of funds. In conclusion, in an ideal world, no public sector workers would draw a special government pension, but we have to allow for people who we desperately need in the system, who save people's lives and or do dangerous jobs. We must give these people the extra pension in order to draw them into these jobs in sufficient numbers in the first place. There may be also some room for interpretation by the three levels of governments of which public sector jobs constitute their makeup as saving people's lives and which public sector jobs constitute their makeup as being dangerous. So thank you for watching tonight's segment. The Perth Straight Shooter will be back with more straight talking, opinion, and debate about topics that are on my mind. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I can be reached through my official website at www.ourhost.ca/davisblog.htm. Until next time, see you in the combat zone. As being